Great time. And hopefully next
And maybe even some of us older owners is help. But I'm back.
Who done stepped in the game at point blank range? Who done stepped in the game at point blank range? Who done stepped in the game? Stepped in the game. Stepped in the game.
So, my absence online has given me a lot of time to think. It got me back to the beginning of what started it all, the beginning of my channel, the reason I joined Games at Large to begin with, way back when, 2013, 2014, one of those years. It was the reason I ever posted on any forums before that, G4, Nintendo's, YourVideoGames.net, if anybody remembers Xbox Addict. What I have noticed continues to happen, and this has been something that should be on the mind of a lot of Nintendo gamers if they are in any way familiar with history and what developers and publishers have been doing. So what I'm talking about is the elephant in the room, and I hope this message gets spread to the people that are responsible. What I'm talking about today, and this will be sort of a rant, is common sense and the focus of where project management starts within a lot of third-party publishers these days. So what I tend to notice is that when it comes to a third-party game, there is a huge focus on either a Sony or Microsoft platform that becomes the lead platform. They figure out some kind of way to shoehorn it onto PC, usually with unfavorable results at least the first couple of weeks, and then the game has to be patched multiple times to take advantage of that hardware. Numerous issues, clipping, collision detection of any type, resolution support, just tons of things that, regardless of the capabilities of the hardware, are problems that are simply because there's no time or no focus on where you're putting your project. And while I understand that money is not infinite, development resources are not infinite, why isn't common sense being applied? Everybody wanted to say throughout all these generations of hardware that, generally speaking, Nintendo hardware is probably the weaker of them. That tends to be the general assumption based on a lot of very false reporting on the gaming media side, a lot of assumptions by the tech insider that works at certain press industry. And that's namely because they're PC enthusiasts and they just compare numbers that they see on a sheet of paper or from what they ask another developer that didn't really have that much experience with the hardware. That's usually how the rumors started spreading from the 5th generation on. Well, the problem I have is, if, per se, this magical Nintendo hardware, or in the PC's case, which is obviously the most capable of any of these, if you're going to develop a project that's going to be multi-platform, why not go with the most popular platform, the least capable platform, and then after you make your success on that most popular, least capable platform, then you take that project and then you port it to the other consoles or the other platforms that are more capable, that can run the engine better, per se, and then you make all your money that way. I understand the focus, and I understand why EA and insert developer here, Ubisoft or whatever, they decide to avoid to put certain projects on Nintendo hardware because, hey, we were already heavily involved in making this for Xbox 360 or what have you. Wii was undeniably the most popular console of its generation. At one point, it doubled the sales of the 360 and PS3 combined. Obviously now the gap is closed a little bit, but the Wii is the second best-selling console of all time. It's a little bit weird where that console went 6 years without major publishers saying, you know what, let's back up a little bit. Let's focus and put this stuff on Wii. It's a 480p console. We can put our 480p engines on them that we used to put on back in the 6th generation. They'll run great, and then we just port that entire engine and up-res them for the 360 and the PS3. Sounds like a great scenario. It makes common sense. You can pitch that to your project management team, and there'll probably be minimal time for the porting process from Wii to other platforms. We have seen some Wii games get ported to PS3 and 360 with some success. So why didn't that happen for the majority of those type of franchises as soon as they saw how well this console had taken off? Well, the tech will be the excuse in the Wii scenario because developers had already invested a fuck ton of money in going towards HD. Well, actually ended up being sub HD because 540p, once you get the engine down, the console could natively upscale to 1080p, but we all know PS3 and 360 kind of didn't fulfill the promise of true 720p, 1080p gaming all the way around. So even when you're upscaling your game from 540p to 1080p or 720p and 1080i in a lot of cases, the engine was already prepared to do certain things in the cases of Unreal Engine and some other custom engines out there at the time. A lot of them being CPU bound, stuff that the Wii couldn't really handle that well or interpret that well, namely because everything would have to be rewritten for the CPU to understand it. The weird thing there is that excuse went away with the Wii U. We all understand what happened with the Wii U, and once the sales did not pick up the way that developers thought it would with Wii, they completely abandoned the platform in the second year, even though the first year was there for them to take advantage of it. That still doesn't make any sense for the rest of the projects that still appeared on the Wii U. What ended up happening was once the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 came out, they would take a PS4 game and then try to shoehorn it onto Wii U instead of making a Wii U game and then porting it up, if you will, to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, which doesn't make any sense. They're all 8th generation platforms, while the Wii U in a lot of respects was less capable because it had less memory than those other two. It made up for it in a lot of other areas, such as RAM latency and things of that nature. Why wouldn't you make the Wii U the lead platform for the 8th generation, then port to Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at that point? It's a no-brainer. You've already started your project. We understand that you were going to leave the Wii U. We understand EA and Ubisoft, you were going to derelict the Wii U sometime in 2013 or 2014. But if that was the case, the projects you have already started, make Wii U the lead platform and then port to the other two. Why waste time and resources paying a port house to try to force an Xbox One engine to work on the Wii U? It doesn't make any sense in that case. That leads us to now the the weird gap where we have a 9th generation platform in the Nintendo Switch and the 8th generation platforms, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, which are still around because they're waiting to go to 9th generation in a different way. So now there are no excuses with regards to engine support, Unreal Engine, Square's engines, the OpenGL format itself, any of the DirectX flavors that could be interpreted in Unreal Engine. All of those different things on the graphics end and on the CPU libraries end, those are kind of null and void now. While this is a mobile platform, it is a mobile platform with 8 CPUs when the machine is docked. 4 when it's on the go, and obviously we know that things are going to change there. If you're making a game for Switch, and as we speak right now, Doom has been announced for Switch. Doom Ultimate, I forget the name of it. Doom, the fuck is the name of that shit? Okay, so Doom Eternal just got announced for PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. At this point, while I give all the props in the world to Panic Button for making things happen on that platform that other publishers obviously would not greenlight, at this point now, you have Bethesda, who has been sort of in bed with Nintendo from the beginning in the marketing and whatnot for this console. Why isn't Bethesda going in feet first and developing their projects for Nintendo Switch, and then taking that engine and making sure it works great and even better on Xbox One in a lot of cases, and PlayStation 4 in a lot of cases, and PC in many cases? Why isn't that happening? That seems to be the elephant in the room, and it's great now that we have mainstream press asking, "Are you making a Switch version?" Because that used to be a thing that they never did for GameCube, Wii, or Wii U. When they say, "Yeah, we are," ask further questions. Ask why or how, and then ask, "Hey, is the Switch the lead platform?" That doesn't really happen. It happened somewhat in the 6th generation where it would just be an internal question for the press to ask, so when they review the game, they could tell you, "Hey, this is the lead platform, these are some of the advantages they got," that you could obviously tell. There were some GameCube games that were third-party games back then where you could tell GameCube was a lead platform, and there were a lot of things that it was capable of doing even better than the original Xbox in some cases. There were a lot of things that that were just simply not possible on the PS2 that GameCube could do natively. Even though on paper the PS2 had more fill rate or available fill rate than both Xbox and the GameCube. It was just, what did you have left once you used all that fill rate? We have this platform that is largely scalable. It is basically a mobile phone that does a lot more, and it has buttons, thank God. So we have this platform now that runs all the modern third-party engines. It runs a lot of these games that people thought couldn't happen. So, and the system is wildly successful, similar to the same scenario I mentioned about Wii. So if we're looking at a wildly successful console that's taking off and selling consoles at a rate faster than the PlayStation 4, even though press isn't making that many articles about that note, somewhere, some publisher has to be like, let's make common sense. Let's build all of our projects going forward for Nintendo Switch. Then we don't have to worry about after the fact, can we afford to pay Panic Button to port our game to their platform? Make the game for Switch, natively for Switch. Then you get all the hard stuff out of the way. How does it work in mobile mode? How does it work in dock mode? How do we interact with the buttons, the screen interface, the resolution change, all the UI changes that you have to do when going from 720p to 1080p that you have to do for the other platforms too, because when you do dynamic resolution, that kind of stuff has to happen. You get all of that out of the way. You get the different controller options out of the way, the online and how you're going to support that out of the way. And then you go back to more common stuff that most developers are used to when you port to Xbox One and PlayStation 4. The network interface and SDK is known for both of those platforms. And then you get all your hard work out of the way for the Switch. It's the most popular platform. When you put it out there, you're going to get, whatever returns back. And then the other two platforms, you get returns back on those as well. And it's not as much of a hit on your studio, since that was, I won't say an afterthought, but it wasn't as much of a big focus because your entire lead project was on the hardest platform. I won't say the hardest platform, but the least capable platform to begin with. You target the things that make Switch successful, that being the CPU and the embedded GPU and how all that stuff works together in tandem. You take advantage of that stuff, and then when you port it to the other platforms, you should have zero issues getting stuff to run. I mean, you already don't have that many issues, according to Panic Button, taking things from PlayStation 4 and getting them to run on Switch. So we know the inverse should be true if PlayStation 4 is all-powerful, the God's gift of gaming type platform. That goes without saying, but I kind of want to know what you guys think. I just think that at this point, it should be common sense to have Switch be the lead platform. It's the best-selling. obviously by now. It's a 9th generation platform. And the other two 8th generation platforms obviously have no issues running the same types of engines. So if somebody says, I don't know, makes a Grand Theft Auto 5 or Grand Theft Auto 6, Lord forbid, for the Nintendo Switch, and then port the other versions to the other platforms, what's to stop that from happening? Why isn't it happening? And why isn't the major part of gaming press talking about lead platforms anymore? That's the majority of the reason why people are having issues porting certain games to certain platforms, because there's such a large gap in knowledge in getting their people internally in bed on how to make things happen. If you only have 5 people over here that you're paying to make this game and you only give them 6 months to make it happen, what do you expect? It was most of the lack of development experience and the tools themselves not being feasible to work with under project crunch time for Wii U. So now with Nintendo Switch and everything being known about it, the SDK is out there, the Unreal Engine SDK is out there. I mean, pretty much everything you need to make a game other than having a development kit in front of you is available. And also these large publishers have development kits. These smaller studios, some of them are literally doing projects for other big publishers just so they can get a chance to work with the Switch SDK because they can't afford one or don't have the contacts to do this. So why aren't the bigger publishers that have a Switch SDK making Switch the lead platform? Again, that's the question for you, IGN, you, GameSpot. Why aren't y'all asking these questions? Why isn't Switch the lead platform, and why aren't y'all talking about it? Why aren't y'all asking directly what is the lead platform for this game or that game? Is the PS4 the lead platform for this game? Obviously, you can tell it is because there's a lot of performance issues in third-party games on Xbox One, but that should at least be talked about. It just seems like the relationship between publishers, developers, and the press is so ho-hum now that the hard questions aren't being asked anymore. Well, fuck it, I'm asking them. So somebody needs to ask. And if it's gotta be me all the time, then I'll do it. Do you play games to have fun or to impress other people? Help me. Now that's a knife.